Righty. Hi, everyone. Haley here, one of the nutrition providers at Vitality Health Matrix. And for today, for our March myth-busting topic, I'm going to be talking about the myth that fresh veggies have more nutritional value than frozen veggies. All right, so many people assume that fresh vegetables are more nutritious than frozen ones, and that in order to, begin working on building in more healthy habits, fresh veggies are the only way to go. Now, I'm sure this belief is based on the idea that, fresh produce is more natural and it hasn't been processed in any way. And I can support that. I totally understand where that thought, that belief is coming from. But we also want to look at the science behind food preservation, nutrient retention, and degradation. We find by looking at these other areas that frozen veggies often match or even exceed the nutritional value of fresh vegetables. All right, so let's look at this a little bit deeper. I've got a couple points to make to hopefully shed some light on this area and help you know that, like, okay, it's not just fresh veggies that I can only have. You can also have the frozen ones too. All right, so let's just look at the journey of fresh vegetables. For fresh produce, nutrient degradation begins immediately. All right, so fresh vegetables start losing nutrients as soon as they are harvested due to exposure to light and oxygen and heat. So here's what typically happens in this process. After being picked, fresh vegetables are transported to distribution centers, then to grocery stores. And this journey, depending on where the vegetable or the produce is coming from, right, can take days or even weeks, especially if it's coming from out of the country, right? Now, once it makes a grocery store, fresh vegetables may sit on the shelves again for a few days. And then after being purchased, we bring them into our home, stick them in the refrigerator, and there they sit again for a few days or even maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, just depending, how fast it might be spoiling in a refrigerator, right? So there is a lot of time in between that vegetable being picked to when it is actually being consumed. So studies show that after just 24 to 48 hours post-harvest, some vegetables can lose a significant percentage of their vitamins, specifically vitamin C, which is really highly sensitive to oxygen and light. All right, so here's a couple more examples. So spinach, looking at that, this can actually lose up to 90% of its vitamin C content within a week of being harvested if stored at room temperature. And green beans can actually lose 77% of vitamin C within 7 days if kept in the refrigerator. All right, now this is not to say that fresh vegetables or produce is not the way to go. All right, absolutely not the point that I want to make here. This is just, of course, something to consider when you do go grocery shopping, and maybe you can get into the routine. If you do want to get some fresh vegetables, get into the routine of like cooking your veggie that day, for dinner when you bring them home, instead of storing them in the refrigerator again for a week, maybe longer. Life happens, right? We are at the grocery store. We have such good intentions of like cooking this veggie as soon as possible. And then it just gets lost in the abyss of the vegetable drawer, right? Or just in the refrigerator in general. And sometimes we don't think to bring those back out. And at that point, it's just continuing to lose a lot of those key nutrients that we could be getting instead. All right, so that's just one point to consider. Now, let's look at frozen vegetables and, the freezing process and how it actually locks in nutrients at peak freshness. All right, now frozen veggies are typically processed very quickly after being harvested. So literally we're talking within a few hours. Now, this process usually involves one, blanching, where the vegetables are briefly boiled or steamed just to deactivate enzymes that actually causes the veggie to spoil. All right. And then that process leads to flash freezing, where the vegetables are quickly frozen at really, really low temperatures. All right. Now, there are some things to consider, especially regarding key nutrient retention. So, we'll talk about blanching here. This can actually cause a slight loss of water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C and some B vitamins, but this loss is pretty minimal. So it's not super alarming, all right? It's just something to make a point about so you are aware of that. But next, leading to the freezing process, this actually locks in most of the other nutrients because the low temperatures stop that enzymatic reaction, right? That degrades them. So that's locking in all those key nutrients there. And lastly, minerals such as iron, calcium, potassium, etc., and fiber remain stable during the freezing process. And while it's frozen, right? So, just to bring up a couple scientific studies here, let me bring them up. A study published in the Journal of Food Composition and Analysis compared the nutrient levels in fresh and frozen vegetables and found no consistent difference in nutrient content. In some cases, it says frozen veggies had higher nutrient levels. All right, so interesting fun fact there. And I have another quick statement too from a 2017 study in food chemistry found that frozen broccoli retained more vitamin C than broccoli that had been stored in a refrigerator for 5 days. All right, so even though we might be losing, again, some water-soluble vitamins like those vitamin C and some B vitamins through the blanching process, the amount, again, is very minimal, and there are still pros through the freezing process that helps to lock in those key nutrients and minerals and fiber that our bodies needs. Okay, so moving on now. What about canned vegetables? Honestly, I get this question. I don't want to say a lot, but it does come up when working with patients. So I figured I'd just throw it into the mix, okay? So we could talk about canned veggies versus frozen and fresh. Now, canned vegetables are often grouped with frozen ones, but they actually undergo a different process, which is a high heat sterilization and could lead to greater nutrient losses, especially for water-soluble vitamins. Now, with that, they still retain fiber and minerals, making them a decent option when fresh and frozen isn't available. Sometimes we're in a pinch, right? I will also say this, that canned veggies can be a really helpful option when an individual is just starting to focus on adding in more veggies. Maybe they're literally going from 0 veggies a day to something, right? Something is always better than nothing. And maybe that individual just doesn't know where to start, or maybe they're just not a big fan of cooking. Like, I am always willing to meet you where you need to be met at. And if that is, hey, I'm currently getting no veggies right now, and I don't even know how to cook them. Like, where do I go? How do I start? I ask about canned veggies. Like, are they open to green beans, for example, or something that could just be really easily added, heated up and added to your plate just to help you start getting into that routine. Again, we all have to start somewhere. So if that's you, that is okay. We want to start getting more veggies in your diet, as of course, this is one of the home-based behaviors that we focus on, right? So however that looks, be proud of yourself for the way you're moving the needle in this area. Now, an extra tip that I do want to leave regarding canned vegetables, pardon me, is be sure to choose canned options that are organic, if available, and BPA free, because most metal cans are lined with a plastic coating that can leach chemicals like BPA into your food. So you really want to be careful about that. And really, what are we eating at the end of the day? That what is in these veggies that we are trying to increase in our day, right? So just be mindful about that. I understand, pardon me, that, there are some jarred vegetables that you can get that could be really helpful, maybe at a local farmer's market, or somebody who jars some things and you could purchase off of them, right? There are some alternatives there, but again, that's just something to consider when it comes to canned vegetables. I'm gonna get a quick drink of water. Guess I've been talking too much today already. Alrighty. So moving on now, you might be wondering, are there any exceptions here? Like, dive into it just a little bit deeper. Now, there are a few cases where fresh vegetables might be better. So we'll just quickly run through these together. Literally just have a couple ideas here that I wanted to put onto your plate and have you chew and see, okay, this resonates with me. I can do that. So one exception might be if you were able to get your fresh produce, again, from a local source, like a farm stand, a local farmer's market, or you garden, right? You've got your own food growing in your yard, and you can pick those veggies or pick that fruit and have for lunch or have for dinner, right? Like it is literally farm to table in that way. That is amazing. And it's being eaten within a few hours, right? So that is a total, like game changer when we're talking about fresh vegetables and, getting them from across the country or in a different country versus from possibly your own backyard or at least in your own town. So that's something to consider and maybe something you can start to do. I understand, that is more of a typical situation come spring to fall, where you can maybe join like a CSA. You can go on to, uh, pardon me, I forget the website, but you can look to see what local farms in your area are a part of a CSA, and you can sign up for that and buy into it and, get all of their fresh produce, seasonal produce and goods, maybe even their meats or eggs or milk or anything like that. It could just be a really good way to, get really amazing food into your body, onto, your family's dinner table, right? But also supporting local too is awesome. All right, so moving on to my next tip here or exception could be, if your vegetables are consumed raw, since blanching during the freezing process may slightly reduce, right? Those vitamins that we talked about. So not all like we don't have to just always consume raw vegetables when we want to have a veggie, right? We could totally cook it. We can roast it. We could do different things to make it really, really delicious. But that is just something else to consider. Just going away from that blanching process and consuming something raw can really help to deliver as many nutrients as possible. Alrighty, so lastly here, here's some additional benefits of frozen veggies that, I just don't want you to overlook. So number one, they can be more affordable and accessible. All right, so frozen veggies are actually often cheaper and they're available year round, regardless of the season that we're in. All right, so for an example here, like I love buying fresh green beans, especially when they are in season, but I'm only going to buy them when they're in season, and the price will be so different when they're out of season. Okay, so I will go straight to the freezer section and I'm going to get, I shop a lot at Aldi, and their frozen green beans are still really good. Yes, they're a little bit smaller. Yes, they are not fresh green beans. There is a difference there, but I know that one, this is going to save me, on my grocery bill. And two, I'm still getting some good nutrients from this frozen option. All right. Number two here is most frozen vegetables contain no additives. So just like the vegetable itself, it's making preservatives minimal, which is huge. Lastly, there will be less food waste as well, since you can store frozen vegetables literally for months or just weeks, right? But unlike fresh ones that do spoil quickly if you don't get to them soon enough. All right, so the verdict here is with this myth is that frozen vegetables really are just as nutritious, if not more nutritious than fresh ones in many cases. Now, again, I say if you plan on eating your fresh veggies immediately, that's awesome. And that's going to yield the most nutrients possible instead of having it be stored in the refrigerator for a week or longer. All right, but never we never want to think that frozen veggies aren't good or they don't count or they're less than just because they aren't fresh, right? They still pack a good amount of nutrients and can also be a great source or a great choice. Right, of veggies for families that are busy or they're on the go a lot. Because one, they're already washed, they're chopped, and they're ready to be cooked, which could be, become an easy like steamed veggie option if you're in a pinch and you just need to get something on the dinner plate that is some type of vegetable, right? You can steam it in a pot, you could air fry it, or you could steam it in the microwave if you use a microwave, whatever that looks like, okay? Instead of just, again, skipping vegetables altogether. Something is always better than nothing. So do what's best for your current season of life and your situation, and be proud of yourself for fueling your body with vegetables, getting in those nutrients, those vitamins, and those minerals. It they're needed, right, to help you feel your best on the inside and out. Alrighty, so that is all I have for you today. I know it's a short one, but I hope this really encourages you to just think beyond fresh veggies and know that you can also get frozen veggies in your day. Stock them up in your freezer. You can combine, I say this all the time, you could combine fresh and frozen vegetables on a roasting sheet, roast them in the oven. Like I'm doing that a couple times a week. All right, so if you need any more tips or if you've got questions, please leave a comment in the club community chat thread on Practice Better, or drop it in our school news feed there, and we will be there for you. All right, again, thank you so much, and I will catch you next time.